Hello, BookTube. I'm going to try this again, this vlog format video. It's not actually a vlog in the true sense of the word because I'm not splicing up different video clips. I don't have the ability to do that, but it is a vlog in the sense of it's a catch-all for what I'm doing and what I'm thinking and whatnot. I did one of these yesterday, and a number of you said that you liked it, that you liked this format, that you wanted it to be regular. One of the people that said so was the CEO and spokesperson of my Brazilian fan club. I had no idea, not only that I had a Brazilian fan club, but that it was big enough to have a CEO and spokesperson. But of course, that mention got me daydreaming about that beautiful, beautiful country with its wonderful, wonderful people. I remembered years and years and years and years ago, oh my God, I don't even know how many years ago, I came very close to living in Brazil. I've traveled everywhere, almost everywhere, but there's only a couple of dozen places where I have lived, where I'm not thinking about my itinerary. I have emptied my footlocker. I am sticking around until I decide to leave, but I'm not already decided to leave, if that makes any sense. Some places I have stayed for a couple of months, some places for much longer than that, and there's a small handful of places where I almost did make that decision and didn't quite do it. Prague is a very good example of that, but so is Pipa in Brazil, where I was told all the way there, you're going to love it. It's incredible. It's beautiful. You're going to love it. And it was beautiful, and it was wonderful. It was even when I was there, which was a long, long time ago, it was already a little bit hedonistic for me, just a bit hedonistic for me, a bit as though that is the whole point. And if you've ever been to one of those places, a place where it's, party all day, party all night, it tends to be inhabited by leathery sunglasses wearing creatures that really aren't human anymore. You get people that'll come and go. You'll get tourists that'll come and go. But the mainstays are these kinds of leathery people, these parrot head people that are just, I don't even know. They're just corroded with the dream of a nonstop paradise party. Very boring and very seedy. You're never safe around those people. And I was dreading that the whole time. And there was quite a bit of that. But there were wonderful people there as well. I took up digs in a particular place right by the ocean, right by the seaside. That's probably $1 million a year now, or $1 million a month, and I was seriously tempted. Once I got used to the feel of the place, I was seriously tempted to stay for a good long time. I didn't, but people really tempted me. So it was nice to hear that I'm the latest thing in Brazil. But I thought we'd go through this vlog and see. I've got a whole bunch of props here. We'll see if we can do the normal breakdown at the beginning. We'll do the tripartite breakdown at the beginning. The weather, because I'm an old man. The weather is very windy. The wind did indeed pick up last night. It's been very windy all day. I think without the wind, this would be a fairly mild day, despite the fact that this is the lowest temperature that we're going to have all week. I think it would still have felt fairly mild, but the wind, oh my, it was so strong that it was whistling around corners. Always a rare thing for this particular building is in a dell underneath a ridge, so we typically don't get the brunt of wind damage at all. We don't get the brunt of wind impact. We certainly don't get wind whistling around corners. That was rather picturesque. And in terms of my health, well, I mentioned yesterday I complained that I somehow managed to pull a hamstring muscle even though I don't do anything. And that is slightly better. Thanks to the 0 of you who asked. That is slightly better. There's a little twinge there, but nothing I can't live with. And then, of course, the third throat clearing category would be Frida, my little baby. Can you see her? Can you make her out there? There she is. She's right next to me, pressed right next to me. I mentioned yesterday that she was seeming a little bit skittish. Something happened to upset her yesterday that I don't know about, and I was with her the whole time. It must have been during a rare instance when I looked the other way, or maybe I was in the shower. But she's a little bit better from that. It must have been something severe because it was really affecting her behavior yesterday. And it's still affecting her behavior today, and that's rare. Dogs don't tend to remember things in that way. She's been sticking really close to me, closer than usual, uh, which of course I don't mind. But whatever it is, it's connected with Hyde Cottage, because when we're outside, it goes away completely, and she becomes just her normal self, strutting around, bossing everybody, yelling at dogs, even though she's not unfriendly with them. She's yelling at your dog. If you don't want your dog to approach a little dog that's yelling, I totally understand. But she's not going to do anything to your dog at all. Not only because she would never do that, she has no aggression in her towards other dogs. It's not aggression. It looks like it to a human, but it's not aggression. It's just a sense of propriety. That's all. That's not only is that true, but I'm not going to allow it. I would never allow it. Again, I understand if people don't, and plenty of people don't. Plenty of people do, though. But the main thing when we're out and about on a nice day, it was windy today. It was a little chillier than I want it to be. But I know it's ridiculous for me to say the first week of March, so it's a little chilly, and I'm sick of that. But the first 2 months of 2025 were humanly freezing here in Boston. So I'm done with the winter. I was done with it anyway. I don't like the winter, so I'm done with it anyway. But the main feature is that she likes to accost humans and order them to stop what they're doing and fuss over her. She loves to do that, no matter what you're doing. It's not important enough that she doesn't take precedence. And the one group of people who love that the most is the one group of people that actually does have a schedule to keep, and that is delivery drivers of all kinds. The mail, UPS, FedEx, whatever it is. Delivery drivers of all kinds love her. Oh my God, they love her, because she will walk right up to them and scream so loud at them that the effort of screaming actually pulls her up off her front legs. For them, and they all know. They don't need me to tell them. They all know, oh, this is an adorable dog, and they all drop what they're doing to come and fuss over her. So, but anyway, those are my throat clearing trio. Then we can move on to BookTube/YouTube. BookTube, the usual thing, just tons and tons of videos that I subscribe to, people I subscribe to making great videos, lots and lots of fun. I made a video today myself that I'm hoping will go up today, a video chat with Hannah from Hannah's Books, always a pleasure. But in terms of broader YouTube, yesterday I mentioned that one of the things that has been pleasing me on broader YouTube lately has been trail cam videos, where somebody sets up a camera on a trail in the woods and just films the wildlife that walks along that trail, puts it into a compilation and just uploads it to YouTube. For some reason, especially if that's done without commentary and without any kind of music, it's so relaxing. It's so calming to see. And in response to that, one of you mentioned that one of your BookTube yens, I think lately, has been narrowboats. And that reminded me, as soon as I read that comment, I remembered that a couple of years ago I had a trail cam-like obsession with narrowboat videos. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's usually in the UK. The UK's extensive system of locks and canals and whatnot that extend right out into the country. Into the countryside. A narrowboat is just that. It's a long, narrow boat that is no more than that wide. You can stretch your arms out and touch each wall. They are narrow enough. They are fitted enough perfectly so that they can fit in every canal. It might take a bit of maneuvering. You certainly can't fit two abreast, but you can make your way through the whole circuitous route of canals, and you can live on your narrowboat. So YouTube is full of tours of people giving you a tour of their narrowboat. So here's where we go in. Here's one room. Then the next. It's all longitudinal. There's no room on port and starboard. It's just one corridor with rooms that in each part of the corridor, because it's all a very cramped space to live. But some people in their narrowboat videos, of course, that comment sent me back to narrowboat videos right away. Some people have made their narrowboats into cute little paradises. And plenty of people have had successful commercial careers in the UK, rented apartments or had homes and sold it all in order to live on a narrowboat. So they're able to fix them up quite nicely. I watched a few narrowboat videos in response to that comment, and I love it. I love the content. I love the videos. It's wonderful to just watch and dream. What would it be like to live in this space. Of course, narrowboats don't have much in the way of space for books. It's just like normal boats don't have much in the way of space for books. But this time around, I was thinking much more profoundly of the shortcomings, the numerous shortcomings of narrowboats, especially in winter, naturally, because I've got the cold on my mind, but also just in terms of all sorts of other things. I've noticed one, I was noticing the shortcomings, and I was asking myself, why are you noticing this? And I had a thought and went looking for a few narrowboat videos in order to verify that thought. And I think I might be onto something. The one way to test it for sure would be to have Mark Richardson watch some narrowboat videos as well, see if he has the exact same reaction. I think I know what the disconnect was between me and a lot of these narrowboat owners, these house-proud narrowboat owners, which is that none of them have ever been to sea. So what they're doing with their narrowboat is basically living on land, only their floor is resting on the water. They have to power up and top off their generators in landings. They have to land periodically to get groceries. They have to know where that is. They have to change out their toilets. A lot of times they need shower facilities and whatnot. So they're totally dependent on these land facilities all the way along their journeys, and the journeys themselves are incredible. You can start off in, London or Leeds or whatever and go all the way up into the middle of nowhere, so that you're in your narrowboat, you come out onto your deck, and you're looking on either side at pasture land. Wonderful. Wonderful to see. But I think if in exchange for all of those land-based comforts, you're getting a lot of water-based discomforts, seepage, inconvenience. You're not getting, there's no ocean. There's no seasickness or anything like that. Your narrowboat is stable the whole time. But winter? I don't know. I was noticing things about these videos that I wasn't particularly liking. It was like you were getting all the worst inconveniences, some of the worst inconveniences of being out on the water. Actually, not on a floating house, but out on the water, with very few of the pluses. If you're out on the open ocean, well, okay, you've got the sea to deal with, first of all, and the sea wants to kill you. And you've got seepage, and you've got cold and draft, and you've got limitations in terms of toiletries or hygiene or whatnot, and storage and whatnot. But you've also got the ocean, which, when it's not trying to kill you, is the most beautiful thing in the known universe, certainly in this solar system. That's a lot, and you don't get that with a narrowboat. You get landscape much as you would see if you were driving in a car. I don't know. I had an ambiguous reaction to narrowboat footage, so of course I'm going to dive in even deeper this afternoon. But anyway, though that's BookTube and YouTube. I did a wonderful interview, hoping to do some more this week, and that brings us to books. And I've got a whole bunch of book stuff that we can wrap up with here. So let's talk about some of the things that I have been reading. I've got the iPad here for some of the things that we can talk about some of the things that I read overnight and this morning. A number of you pointed out from yesterday's vlog that I was not talking about any new releases, even though I mostly read new releases. That's true. And I read them. I just don't feel comfortable giving assessments or any kind of review of a new release on video. I feel that I should write that. I don't know. And we'll see. This is only vlog number 2, so I will evolve this as I go along. The first thing that I reread last night, or it was actually last evening. It wasn't even the nighttime. I read, I talked about yesterday, a Timescape book, Wilson Tucker book, Resurrection Days, that I didn't particularly like. It was a reread, but it was a reread after decades, and it didn't, as the saying goes, age well. And I was thinking about that book, and I was, like I mentioned in yesterday's vlog, I was thinking if I saw a copy of that book with the Timescape logo up top, I would almost certainly have bought it, a paperback copy of that book. Now I would not. Now, if I saw it, even with the strength of nostalgia, I would not buy it because I freshly reread it and it's not all that good. But that experience was a little disappointing because I have a sentimental soft spot for Timescape paperbacks. So yesterday I I reread another Timescape book. I reread Keith Laumer's book, Rereading of the CDC. With a Rowena cover that is not only one of the only science fiction covers that I've ever seen that uses a codpiece, but also I would say one of the best uses of a codpiece. God bless Rowena, wherever she is. Needless to say, Rereading himself does not dress this way in these stories, but God bless that cover. And if I came across a paperback of this in the wild, you can bet I would buy it. I have a copy, but I would get another one. And this Keith Laumer's Rereading stories had a couple of Timescape volumes, and these are short stories or longer stories about a two-fisted diplomat in the Corps Diplomatique Terrestrian, named Rereading, whose bosses are mealy-mouthed, weak-chinned diplomatic types who write stern memos and whatnot. Rereading likes to get things done with his fists, with his savoir-faire, with his gun, wrangling things behind the scenes. He is not a senior diplomat at all. He's under the beck and call of these useless older men who almost never realize that he is actually fixing things behind the scenes. It's a wonderful Shaggy Dog type science fiction stuff. It's as much of its time. It's as much a period piece as the Wilson Tucker, but so winning, I think, because the comedy lands, whereas all the comedy in Resurrection Days does not land. And also, I have a soft spot for the Rereading stories. I've been reading these things forever. I was a fan of Keith Laumer when I was not a fan of Wilson Tucker, so this was just what I needed to get the taste out of my mouth and to put Timescape back into its position as a sentimental favorite. I wouldn't have needed much of an excuse to reread these. The Rereading stories are a comfort read for me, and it only helps if it comes with a comfort cover, complete with a codpiece. So that was one thing that I read, and then last night one of the things I read was another gleaning from those free ebook sites where you sign up with your email and you get a blast every day of books, and some of them are 99 cents, $1.99, $2.99, but plenty of them are free. And I use it as a way to find out what indie authors are out there. I read indie authors every single day for work, for the trade journals, but I like to see what else is out there too. I have a bottomless appetite for it. So I read, this is not a new book, so this does not count as me reading or reviewing a new release, but it's a new author to me. I found a book called by Jada Fisher and K.L. Reinhardt. I think not only is this a collaboration between those two names, but I think that both of those names are collaborations between two other people. At least both those names are pen names. But this is Dragon's Squire, which is the first book in a series in which a young man named Kalen is the typical young man that you would see in a fantasy story. He is a little bit unsure, he's a little bit bumbling, and he apprentices himself as a squire to a knight in a fantasy world where there are also dragons. And one of the dragons involved is, unbeknownst to Kalen, is a young woman named Zira, who has been mystically shackled in her human form. She can transform into a dragon, but she's been shackled in human form. And I like this quite a bit. I am having a pretty good luck with these free ebooks. Now, with yesterday's ebook, I wasn't really sure. One of yesterday's ebooks was like 12th in a series. This is first in a series. This is meant to introduce you to this world. I'm pretty sure that these authors have done a lot of books in this series, and I now want to read them all because of this one. This is pretty good adventure fantasy. It's not, anything grand or anything new or anything brilliant, but I really enjoyed it. I was never tempted to stop reading. Not at all. If you're interested, this is fantasy full of dragons. It has plenty of dragons. Okay, then this next one is a reread. I read this last night. I was prompted. It's a classic. It's The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. And I was prompted to reread it by this. Books of the Century. This is a big fat anthology of 100 years or so of book reviews in the New York Times. And this collection has very early on, I think the first section in here has a review, the review that the Times actually ran of The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. It's not signed. Back in 1906, the reviews usually weren't signed. Nothing in this section of the paper was signed. And the review is not positive. It ends by refuting a blurb that was already going around about the book. There was a blurb going around about the book that Upton Sinclair had written a modern day, a factory worker's version of Uncle Tom's Cabin. And this review says, Mr. Upton Sinclair does not remind the reader of John Knox or Martin Luther or of the leaders of the abolition movement. He has not written a second Uncle Tom's Cabin. So I thought that bit of punch throwing was interesting anyway. But the thing that really intrigued me about the New York Times review is that it talks about socialism. The whole review. It's a long review, and it talks only about socialism. That this is a socialist novel. Let's talk about politics. Let's talk about all that. And obviously, as you can tell from this Penguin Classic Deluxe cover, and as you could tell if you ever encountered this in school, we don't think of it in those terms anymore. We think of it for factory evils, for factory conditions, worker conditions, and also maybe animal cruelty. We think of it that way and not any other way. We certainly don't think of it as a socialist novel, not at the level where it's introduced at school. So I reread it. I knew that I was in for something because it's not an enjoyable read. It's boring. It's preachy. It's loud. It's a very loud novel and doesn't justify it. And sure enough, it does not improve on another reading. I was launched into it because A, the review, that old reprinted review in the Times intrigued me, and also B, I realized it had been a long time since I read it, and it is a much talked about book, but it's not enjoyable. Not in any way. It's easy to read, but I didn't find it enjoyable at all. To me, it kept reminding me of Frank Norris, the author of McTeague and The Octopus, who I can't stand. It's kind of odd, too, because I've over the decades, I've told people I really don't like Upton Sinclair all that much. I don't like The Jungle, anyway. Some of his other stuff is better. I like it a little bit more. And I can't stand Frank Norris. I can't stand that. His kind of dumb, boring naturalism I just hate. And people have always said, over the decades, bookish friends of mine have said, well, if you feel that way about Frank Norris, why do you love Theodore Dreiser so much? Might be worth rereading Dreiser to find out. But anyway, that was another book that I read, and another thing that I reread last night. I read it. I don't even think I have a cover for it. I read. First thing this morning, I read the PDF of, and there's a new reprint coming out of Billy Budd by Herman Melville. A gorgeous hardcover thing with illustrations by Barry Moser, who I love. I think it's going to be an oversized hardcover. It's going to be a wonderful thing to give to somebody, especially a Melville fan, because Moser illustrated volumes are wonderful. I have the Barry Moser illustrated Moby Dick from 40 years ago that is just my favorite edition of Moby Dick. So I reread it. Of course, it's an interesting thing to read anyway. I don't know how many times I've read Billy Budd. It's an interesting thing to reread anyway because it's so weird in Melville's output. It's who knows what he would have done to it if he'd tried to put it into the world himself. And yet it has become this iconic story. It's not every author. It has an iconic story that is basically posthumous. Upton Sinclair does not, certainly. It's very, very interesting. It's also well done. And brings almost to the fore several subterranean themes in Melville that I don't think you have to stretch very far to find them. And they are there in Billy Budd. I can't wait to hold the physical thing in my hand. Oh, my. And talk about, I don't think the publisher cares about this, but talk about gift-giving opportunities. Oh, my God. What a perfect thing to give a bookish person. It's not long, first of all. You're not committing them to Moby Dick. It's wonderful. The story is great. And it's also going to be, I haven't held it in my hands yet, but it's going to be a beautiful physical copy. Can't wait. Reprint culture, just in general, I am fascinated by. I'm a big fan of it. It interests me. So to have something like this coming out is a joy. Unless I mean, I can't think of anything that, if the binding's really bad, maybe, but you wouldn't get Barry Moser woodcuts, and you wouldn't get his etchings and do bad binding. Or maybe it has a hysterically SJW introduction, something that ruins the whole thing, but I don't see that happening either. It could happen. It could happen, but I don't see it. Anyway, I read the PDF. Don't need much urging to reread Melville, and I will be showing you the physical copy. But I have to say, when it comes to books in the last 20 hours, the thing that has been commanding my attention the most has been this thing. Birds of America. Full of illustrations and photographs breaking down every single bird. See some families with different variations and whatnot. And this is everything that I remembered it being. In fact, it's so much better. It's an oversized book. It's a little unwieldy to use, but I'm so happy that I grabbed this, because it's not just a scientific dry breakdown of each bird. Every entry is suffused with not only personal recollections of whoever wrote that entry, a number of hands did, I remember this wonderful moment at sunset spotting such and such a bird, but also all kinds of literary allusions. I've lost track. I'm not done with this at all. I'm not done living in this book at all. But I've lost track already how many times Emerson and Thoreau have been invoked, how many times great English natural history works have been invoked. I've lost count of how many times. This is everything I wanted it to be. It is everything that it doesn't look like. When you look at it and you look at these pictures throughout, you think this is going to be a natural history breakdown of these things. Here is when they mate. Here's when they molt. Here's where they live. Here's when they migrate. And that fairly dry. In other words, something you'd use for a bird guidebook, even though you would never use something that weighs 10 pounds as a bird guidebook out in the field. You look at this and you might think that, and it's not that at all. It is so good. Oh my. I don't usually rhapsodize over larger books because they're pretty unwieldy to use, but in this case, I'm so glad I got it. And as I mentioned when I hauled it, the used book smell is unbelievably strong. I always mock people who say, well, I need my books to smell wonderful. I always mock them. That's a silly thing. But I'm as susceptible to it as anybody else. It's not a reason to buy a book, much less to forswear ebooks. But I'm as susceptible as anybody else to it, and this has it in spades. So, but in addition to that, we'll continue with what we did yesterday. Yesterday, in addition to all the books that I was talking about, I also opened a package on camera to see if maybe the timing of the book was perfect for the night's reading. Yesterday, it was. A new book about the nature that is in your own backyard, which I am studiously not talking about in this video, even though I read it last night. We'll have to figure out what to do. We're going to do these vlogs. We'll have to figure out what to do about new books, because I read them a lot. Continuing to do a vlog series that studiously avoids mentioning them, just because I think that such reviews should happen in print, doesn't feel honest, really. So we'll see. We'll figure it out. Other people do vlogs, daily vlogs, and they have to work them out as they go along. But anyway, I've got a couple of packages here. We'll see if either of these is going to go on the pile tonight. And also, this will serve as a mail haul as well. So what is this first one? Okay, there's an invoice of some kind. We certainly don't want that. What is this? Okay. Do you have a date? Okay, this comes out in May. Okay. This is The Giveaway, the Clay Blackburn story by Owen Hill, with an introduction by Jonathan Latham. And Barry Gifford has a blurb on the top saying the Giveaway tetralogy is a nasty rat-a-tat-tat 21st century noir, cynical as hell. So is the whole tetralogy in here? This is a tiny little thing. Looks like it is. It looks like it is. Yeah, the Chandler Apartments, which are pictured on the front there. The Chandler Apartments, The Incredible Double, Mayakovsky's Bugatti, and Righteous Kill. Okay, so very short works. Let's find out about them. Clay Blackburn, poet, book scout, and sometime detective, cruises the mean and sometimes not so mean streets of Berkeley. With his accomplice, a soldier of fortune, a defrocked FBI agent, and a smooth and sexy con man, he lives a life of bisexual sensation with a little crime solving on the side. I'm intrigued already. As such, Blackburn is a sly, witty, and more or less reliable raconteur of the last 30-something years of the Bay Area's radical bohemia and bookselling. In the tradition of Ian Rankin's Edinburgh and Jean-Claude Izzo's Marseille, bears uncomfortable witness to Berkeley's descent from countercultural paradise to neoliberal inferno. Okay. So Chandler Apartments was published in 2002. The Incredible Double was published in 2010. Then Mayakovsky's Bugatti was in 2025. And there's a new short story called Righteous Kill, which came out in 2021. It's not new, but it was a short story. So the people who read those original novelettes might not have seen it. And that's okay. That is basically it. How fascinating. Okay, I did not know about this. So this comes out in at the end of May. This comes out right on the doorstep of June. But so ordinarily that would mean it's not a candidate for reading tonight. But these have all been out already. Except maybe Mayakovsky's Bugatti. That is a 2025 release date. But everything else in here has been out already. So I'm very intrigued about this thing. And I could just yield to that and read it tonight, because 2/3 of it is a reprint. I'll read the introduction by Jonathan Latham, and if I'm ineluctably pulled in, well, then it'll go on the reading for tonight. But the next thing is a box, a big heavy box. And the heavy is important because this might be a finished copy. And if it's a finished copy, then the publication date might be just right for gross, another invoice. The publication date might be just right for reading tonight. So let us see what we have here. Here, let me get. Oh, baby. Oh, what's the matter, baby? I wish I knew what was bothering you. Oh, nothing's wrong, baby girl. So let's see. Okay, all right. Oh my. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, this is not a finished copy. This is actually an advanced copy, but it's the advanced copy of a 1,200-page book. And it comes out in June. Okay, this is... Oh my, how incredible. Okay, hang on just a second here. This comes out in June. Oh, you're not playing ball, are you? Okay, well, all right, two can play at that game. This is The World at First Light, A New History of the Renaissance, translated by Patrick Baker. This is by Baron Ruick. Womp. Look at the size of that thing. This is obviously of interest to Steve. A 1,200-page biography of the Renaissance obviously is of interest. The reason that I was hesitating is because of the copyright information. Because the copyright information says that it's copyright Princeton University Press 2025. But 2025 is 3 months old. There's no way possible that Patrick Baker translated 1,200 pages of anything in 3 months and got it to press. And so I'm thinking that there is another publication date for this book that ought to be in the copyright information. Probably it will be in the finished copy. But I want to know when this book was written originally. And I don't know that you are going to tell me. Dear reader, the aim of this book is to elucidate the world historical importance of the Renaissance. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, well, the author's preface was written in 2023. So I'm assuming that's when the book came out. And Patrick Baker has been working on this translation ever since. So, technically, this isn't new either. I could talk myself into reading both of these tonight. This, oh my, oh my. All right, let's read about it. Do we have anything that we can read? Yes. The cultural epoch we know as the Renaissance emerged at a certain time and in a certain place. Why then and not earlier? Well, Ada Palmer, in her book, Reinventing the Renaissance, which I've just shown you a couple of times, would say otherwise. She would deny that whole description. This book explores the cultural and historical preconditions that enabled the European Renaissance. The author shows that the rediscovery of ancient knowledge, including the science of the medieval Arab world, played a critical role in shaping the beginnings of Western modernity. He explains that the Renaissance emerged in a part of Europe where competing states and cities formed relatively open societies. Most of the era's creative minds, from Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo to Copernicus and Galileo, came from the middle classes. The art of arguing flowered the basso continuo of intellectual and cultural breakthroughs. The author argues that two revolutions shaped the Renaissance. I know what one of them should be. There is only one root cause of why the Renaissance happened when it did and why it did, and that is the printing press. That's it. Talk all you want about plagues and maritime shipping and city-states and relative freedom, but it's the printing press. That's what allowed it to happen when it did, to the extent that it did, as opposed to in the 8th century or the 12th century. No offense to Homer Haskins. So let's see what we're told here. A media revolution. Okay. Triggered by Gutenberg's invention of movable type. Great. Okay. Which itself was the driving force behind the scientific revolution and the advent of modern science. The author reports on the dark side of the era: hatred of Jews, witch panic, religious wars, and the atrocities of colonialism. In a series of meditative counterfactuals, the author considers other cultural rebirths throughout the first millennium, from the Islamic Empire to the Carolingians, examining why the epic developments of the Renaissance took place in the West and not elsewhere. The complicated legacy of the Renaissance, he shows, encompasses the art of critical thinking as learned from the ancients, the emergence of the modern state, and the genesis of democracy. So 2 big books on the Renaissance, and this thing's twice as long as Otto Palmer's book. 2 big books on the Renaissance, right at the beginning of 2025. Steve is in hog heaven. And we have noir. Weird noir. Berkeley noir. So we've got these 2 things. I could make a case that both of these could be read tonight. Neither one is new, so I don't have to worry about poisoning my mind to an advanced response of something that's coming out in a few months. I don't know. I'm strongly tempted in both cases. But anyway, that plus this, I will be spending a good deal of time just luxuriating in this thing, because I'm having a blast with it. Just having a blast with it. And also, as long as we're talking about ongoing stuff, there's this thing, which I cannot seem to leave. I just cannot seem to leave it. So there you go. That was another vlog. That was a vlog for March 7th, 2025. All sorts of stuff. Don't know if it's of interest, except in Brazil. but I'm going to wrap this up, and maybe we'll do another vlog tomorrow. Let me know, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.